Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys checking out today's video and spending some time with me. And guys, today we're going to be talking about why so many people struggle with jig fishing. I hear it all the time in my comments. People say that they got a lot of confidence in like fishing a shaky head or Texas worm, but a Texas rig worm, but they just can't catch any fish on jigs. They don't have any confidence in it. And I'm going to go over some things that I feel are the reason why people lack confidence in jigs, and give you some tips and advice on how to get confidence in it. Because man, a jig is probably one of the top, if not the top, quality bass lure that you can fish. It's been around forever. They're great bass catchers 12 months out of the year. So we're going to sort of break some of those intimidating factors down a little bit if you're struggling with jig fishing. And also, guys, speaking of jig fishing, we're going to be talking a lot about, specifically live rubber jigs, which are my favorite. The difference is, guys, most jigs are made by silicone skirt, and they're tied with like a rubber band on it, but nothing can really compete with a living rubber hand tie. These are my Blaukat Throwback jig, my Blaukat Power Finesse jig. I'll put both of these links in the description in my Tackle Warehouse video if you guys I'll put these in my Tackle Warehouse links in the description of this video if you guys would like to pick some up after the video we get done here. But living rubber jigs is one of the reasons that a lot of people struggle with jig fishing, is they don't use living rubber enough. Living rubber has been around forever. In my opinion, it's the superior material for jig fishing. So I'll put the link in the description if you guys would like to pick up some of those, my Signature Series jigs there. Really appreciate that. Okay, aside from the fact that the skirt material is one thing, that's one aspect of it, there's still a lot of different reasons people that struggle with jig fishing. A lot of people say that they don't know what they're trying to feel. Now, if you have ever caught a bass on a Texas rig worm or a shaky head or something like that, you can catch fish on a jig because it's no different. The bite's the same. Pretty much how you work the bait is the same, with a few modifications we'll talk about. But if you have caught fish on any type of a bottom bouncing lure, it's the same type of a bite. It's like, you'll pitch out there, you're working your jig or your Texas rig around the bottom, and then usually the strike occurs, your line ticks like that, or all of a sudden you lift up on it and something feels funny, you're not really sure, and then maybe you feel a surge and your line starts swimming out. It's the same thing. Jig, Texas rig fishing, it's no different with that. Now, one of the reasons that people struggle with jig fishing is they don't set their jigs up right, and they don't shift their expectations a little bit, because unless you're using a finesse jig will get a lot of bites, but if you're using a full-size jig, which is better for bigger fish, the number of bites that you are going to get are probably going to go down a little bit. Most of the time, let's say, for example, you and I were fishing out in the boat, and we both are good worm and jig fishermen, and I had a Texas rig worm on and you had a jig on, I probably would get 25% more bites on the Texas rig or the Texas rig creature bait, but you probably are going to be catching bigger fish. You're not going to get as many bites, but you're probably going to catch more quality fish. So I think one of the reasons when people start jig fishing is they don't get very many bites on it, so they lose confidence in it. But the number of bites that you get on a jig is relative to a lot of different things. It's relative to the size of the jig that you use, the color of the jig you use, and the cover that you're fishing it in. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about colors on jigs. There's two primary color patterns on jigs. You have your browns and your greens, and then you have your darker colors like your blacks, black and blue, black and chartreuse. Most of the time, you're gonna get twice as many bites on some type of a brown or green combination. It's just more natural looking in the water. A jig is a large profile lure, so it takes a little bit of a commitment for the fish to hit it. And something that's a little bit more subdued look in the color is gonna get you more bites than some type of a real dark jig. Although the dark jigs normally get you a little bit better bites. So that's one aspect of it. This next aspect of it is the type of cover that you fish the jig in. Most of your better success on jig fishing is going to come around some thicker cover, like flipping it into cattails or reeds or lily pads or grass beds or underneath the boat dock or in a lay down tree or something like that. Jigs work better around heavy cover. Aside from a finesse jig, now a finesse jig works good just on bare rock because it is smaller, but a traditional full-size pitching and flipping jig, like my Blaukat Throwback jig here, you need to fish it around a little bit heavier cover. And you also need to fish it on heavy line. That's another reason a lot of people struggle with jig fishing, is they try to fish it on too light a line. Most all the time when I'm fishing my full-size jig, I use 25-pound test Seaguar and VizX line on it. I just like the way it falls, very efficient with it, got a lot of confidence in it. I see a lot of people trying to use a jig like this on 12 or 15-pound line. That's too light. You need to use heavy fluorocarbon line with it. And on the finesse jig, you can use a little bit lighter, with lighter techniques with that, or lighter line with that. Another thing is the reason a lot of people struggle with jig fishing is the way they don't know really how to work a jig. Now, you can't go wrong as long as you keep the jig on the bottom. You can catch fish dragging the jig, or you can catch fish, just shaking it. But let me get a rod over here, and I'm gonna talk about it. The best way to get a bite on a jig is to hop it pretty significantly off the bottom. This is where a lot of people mess up, because a jig, in a sense, it's sort of a cross between a finesse bait and a reaction lure. And in my opinion, hopping the bait off the bottom will generate more strikes. So let's say, for example, you cast out there and you're working your Texas rig worm, and you're just dragging your worm across the bottom like that. Or you try to do the same thing with the jig. You throw your jig out there, you're just dragging it along the bottom, hopping it like that. You can catch some fish doing that, but you'll double the amount of strikes you get if you throw that jig out there and you hop it off the bottom. Hop it about a foot off the bottom, maybe 2 foot, like that. So I'll let it hit the bottom, I'll snap it off the bottom, and if I pitch it into cover, let's say if I'm pitching it under a dock or something, I'll pitch it in there and I'll do the same thing. I'll just hop it like that off the bottom. Not super hard, but the difference is you don't want it like just sort of hopping along the bottom like that. You want it to come up off the bottom like that, come up off the bottom and fall down. That is going to generate the reaction strike off of the jig. That means the difference between a lot of different stuff a lot of times. And another thing with that, another reason why a lot of people don't catch as many fish on jigs is they don't have enough jig colors to match the water clarity. Now, there's a lot of different color variations. Like I said, we got 6 different colors in my throwback jig. And the thing about that is the water visibility dictates not only the trailer, but the color jig you want to use. And a lot of people don't equate the color exactly to the water clarity. Now, here's my rule of thumb. If I'm fishing water visibility of less than 1 foot, I use a black and chartreuse jig. That chartreuse and that dirty water stands out, it'll get you more bites. If I'm fishing water visibility between, say, a foot to maybe 2 foot, maybe a foot and a half, foot to foot and a half in that zone, just a little bit cleaner than a foot of water, I use the black and blue. The black and blue in about 12 to 15 inches of water visibility, really good. It gets a lot of bites. It really stands out a lot. And if I'm fishing really dirty water, like the water visibility is say under 12 inches, maybe it's 5 or 6 inches, then I'll use sometimes a solid black jig with a solid black trailer. Now, as the water clarity gets cleaner, say the water visibility is 2 to 3 foot. In that zone, I'm using some type of a brown with blue in it, brown with orange in it, brown with purple, some type of brown with a green pumpkin trailer in 2 to 3 foot of clarity. And if the water visibility is over 3 feet, most of the time I'm using some type of a green pumpkin variation, either straight green pumpkin purple, something like this, a green pumpkin purple, with a green pumpkin trailer. Matching that clarity of the water to the skirt color that you're using is super, super critical with it. Another thing that'll help you out on jig fishing, get more bites, is you always want to dye the tail with a little bit of either chartreuse or orange. I usually just use a marking pen here, and I'll just put, not a whole lot, I just put just a little bit on the tail of it there, just about like this. Just a little bit of puff on there. That little bit of chartreuse on the tail of the jig will definitely increase the amount of bites you get too, even if you're in clear water. It doesn't really matter. Just there's something about when that tail moves and you got that little bit of chartreuse or orange on there that makes a big difference with it. But the main thing, guys, I think if there's 2 things that I can tell you why people struggle with jig fishing, is they work the bait too slow and they keep it too tight on the bottom all the time. They don't hop it up enough, and they don't use the right jig color and the right trailer color for the water clarity. Now, I've got a bunch of jig videos in my playlist here. If you guys would like to go back on my playlist in either this channel or Intuitive Angling that I got a ton of good jig info there. You can sort of get as much info as you want on jig fishing through there. But that's a few basic tips there. That's probably why a lot of people struggle. And guys, don't be intimidated by jig fishing, because it's a technique that you really need to learn. It is such a great way to catch fish. And when the situations are right for it, you can't beat it for quality fish. I mean, it catches big fish without a doubt, and it catches fish in every condition. A jig is one of those few lures. There's only a handful of lures, you can say this. It'll catch fish in every state in the country that has bass in it, in every month of the year that has bass, that you have throughout the year. It catches fish in every water clarity, muddy, in between water, clear water, it doesn't really matter. Catches fish before a cold front, after a cold front. It is probably the most consistent bass catcher of any lure out there. In fact, I know it is. I know a jig is the most consistent bass catcher. But jig fishing, I'll leave you with this one thing. The two most complex techniques to learn in bass fishing are jig fishing and jerkbait fishing, because you have so many different variables to them. In jig fishing, like I said, you got the weight of the head, you got the profile of the jig, you got the color of the skirt, you got the color of the trailer, you've got the line size in correlation with it. You've got a ton of different variables, how to work the bait, that all have to sort of come together before you have success on it. But don't give up on it, man. Just keep using it, keep trying them, keep experimenting, and you'll definitely get you'll get confidence in it eventually. So anyway, guys, I'll put my jig link in the description of the video. Thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'll see you later.